Okay. Now I only have 13 minutes. So the whole idea, I'm going to be too loud. The whole idea was to talk about my idea of India, which is interesting since I got here at midnight last night. But I was here, and have been doing a lot of work. The one thing I will say, as Amit said, I'm the research director at the Martin Prosperity Institute at the Rotman School at the School of Management at the University of Toronto. And one of the big things that we do is our goal is to understand what makes regions prosperous and successful, right? To really know where that comes from and how it happens. And so one of the big things, especially as we're doing work now looking at India, we're also starting to look more at China and other parts of the world, and one of the big things is the role that urbanization plays. And so really in terms of kind of my idea of India, I think I really have to talk a little bit about urbanization. And so I thought, well, okay, I've been doing some other stuff that I think actually fits in quite nicely, and that is we've been doing a bunch of work using satellite data. So the nighttime light stuff. So actually this is the view of India's urbanization from 830 kilometers up, which is a polar synchronous orbit, because that's where the satellite is that's been taking the pictures. And so that was really of understanding kind of what it is and what happens. So if I can advance my slides, we'll see. Yay. This is the nighttime light image for India in 1992, and we'll go forward. This is 2010. Right? There's 90, oops, I go too far. 92, 2010. Oh, see, that's why everyone's having problems with these slides. It advances too much. Okay, so you see it, right? You see what has happened in the kind of intervening almost 20 years of how much development there has been between and among the cities. You know, you can kind of pick the bright lights out and see how much brighter they get, right, as time goes on. If we look at a few kind of specific examples, so this is the Delhi region from 1992. The colors here are just to accentuate the differences. The satellite data itself, the actual satellite is used to capture meteorological information for the U.S. Defense Department. And specifically what the Defense Department has been interested in ever since kind of World War II and D-Day is the weather. And what the satellite actually does is it captures the reflection of starlight and moonlight off of clouds. So this one particular instrument is for actually finding clouds at night. Well, of course, if there are no clouds, then you actually find what's sitting on the planet, right? You find the cities, you find the nighttime lights. So, but because the instrument is designed to measure the reflected moonlight off of clouds, when it runs across something like Delhi, and even in 92, or Las Vegas, it gets a little overwhelmed. So the really dark red areas here are what's called, it's saturated. It's actually bright, it's the brightest spot, but the instrument itself kind of cuts those parts off. But nevertheless, by switching to color rather than the black and white, you can see more of the kind of less saturated and where some of the other lights are. So we look at 92, again, the Delhi region 92, 20 years later, same scale, right? This is exactly the same, this is the same place on the map, but you know, boy, look what's happened. Not a surprise, right? I mean, everyone has been talking about this, you know. Everyone who was trying to drive here this morning knows about this. So the challenge becomes, okay, you know, what else is going on, right? So if we look at a few other kind of you know, specific examples. So here's Mumbai and the Pune region in 92, and what it looks like now. Again, and here you see actually, right, how the two cities themselves are actually kind of reaching out towards each other. It probably won't be that much longer before they're actually pretty much, it will be a single region. If it isn't, in fact, it probably in many ways is already. And again, well-known, great examples. Yes, urbanization is wonderful. Urbanization leads to great things, and here's a great way to kind of capture and see what's going on with that. The Hyderabad is the other, just my third example. I guess that's my final one. To really say, okay, and this was talked about earlier, right? Some of what's been going on here, and again, back to almost exactly the same time frame. In 92, here's what it looked like. Here's what it looked like in 2010. It's huge, right? It's dramatic. I mean, how much it increased, how much the development increased, how much everything was going on. I show these examples not because I think they're cool to look at, and cool, colorful images are always fun. But because they are the kind of expected ones. But then the thing was, okay, well, but if I go back, and I'm not going to try to do it with this remote control now, but if I go back and look at kind of overall, look at India in 92 and look at India in 2010, yes, the cities get bigger, they get brighter, but other things are happening too. And so I actually spent a bunch of time kind of, the satellites themselves, the individual cells on the satellite are actually about 1/2 kilometer. That's the resolution that it picks up, about 1/2 kilometer square. So it's does a pretty good job. And I have fairly detailed imagery that allows me to sit down and look at everything. So I started looking through and said, there's more going on here. Yes, there's, the urbanization, and there's the urbanization of Delhi, and the urbanization of Mumbai, and Chennai, and you can pick, right, the 10 biggest cities, how much bigger they've gotten, and all the numbers about urbanization and what's been going on. Okay, great. But I said, but there's more than that. There's something else going on. And so I started looking and kind of poring over and looking at the maps and trying to find things. And so if you find, I apologize for the kind of cut of the Google map here, but off to the west of Hyderabad, much closer to the ocean, I don't want to say it's the middle of nowhere. Kolhapur has about 500,000 people living in it, and the kind of region around it, but to give you a sense of kind of where it is, right? You're right on the border of Maharashtra and Karnataka. And if you look at it in 92, so this is the orange line here is the border between the two states. You've got Maharashtra up on the upper left and Karnataka down here. And Kolhapur is the little city, I don't know if the laser pointer will work, here. And okay, in 1992 it was producing some nighttime lights and this kind of region around it and what was going on, right? As I said, it's 500,000 people now. I don't actually know what the number was in 92. It was definitely a lot less. 2010, it looks like this. And this is the point that I'm like, ooh, wait a minute, this is really interesting, right? Because you start looking at what was going on in places that weren't Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore and Chennai and Calcutta, right? You say, wait a minute, this is a city that's 500,000 people, right? And we actually had this example also came up earlier today, right? When the filmmaker was talking about when he took his son back to his village, there was a school there now, right? There was mobile phones there. There was electricity there, right? This is an example of that, right? We go from this, to this, and you actually see that the development itself is happening and is happening in a lot of other places. So it's not the urbanization of India and the development and the prosperity that comes from that urbanization is not just limited to the big cities. It's something that's actually happening across the country. And so then, right, then I go back to Delhi again. I say, well, wait a minute. The other thing that happens with Delhi, it's not just that my giant red blotchy looking thing gets bigger and blotchier, right? The area around it also picks up a lot of light as well. And we're talking about fairly significant area around, but you actually see not only the development of kind of the metropolitan region and the stuff that's in the DCR, but also in the surrounding kind of countryside, you see much more development in terms of nighttime lights, which again is a great measure for urbanization, of seeing urbanization happening, not only in the city, but also even in the countryside surrounding the cities. And so really being able to kind of go through and pick at that. And so when I said, right, so if I go back and I look and say, okay, here's 92, oh, here we go. There's 92, there's 2010. It's not just about certain places, cities getting bigger that were already there. There's a whole lot of other things that show up. Let's see if we do it again. Boy, this is picky. There's a whole lot of other things between here and here, right, that also show up. The interesting thing is there are places that were there before. So you very, very rarely, whenever I found something where it was like, it was total darkness in 1992, and there's a fairly bright light source there in 2010, it's because of some kind of major commercial development, a new plant was built, something like that. But you don't see new towns and villages really showing up. What you see is the intensification, the urbanization of existing ones. And so when I look at it and I say, okay, right, what is my idea of India? And I'm going to spend the next 5 weeks here wandering all over the place to get a better sense of urbanization in India and what's going on and how that's tied to prosperity and what it is. But what I see is, right, that it's not just the biggest places that are getting brighter, the smaller places are also getting brighter. That things are happening, right, in many places across the country and not just in a select few. And so I really like to think that my idea of India is a place that actually is urbanizing, and with that urbanization comes increased prosperity, but it's something that's actually happening across all of India and not just in a select few places. And that keeps me pretty much to my time limit. Thank you very much.